Welcome to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with a wide range of music personalities, from rock and roll Hall of Famers to Grammy winners and today's rising stars. Recorded from the Old Rock House in St. Louis, Missouri, here's your host, Aaron Perlut.
Welcome back to the Loadout Music Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Perlut, and today we are joined by Josh Lovelace of the multi-platinum Need to Breathe, which as of September 15th will have the entirety of its new album, Caves, out. Josh, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you're in Knoxville, right?
I am. Yeah, Knoxville. It's it's a hot day here, but it's got to be. I mean, I'm sure it's hotter other places in the world, but for me, it's pretty hot for Knoxville today. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm trying to stay cool.
Yeah, it's hotter than Hades everywhere. It seems like right now. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I know you joined the band in about 2011, and that was about 10 years into when the band initially started. But one thing that's really always amazed me about Need to Breathe is that it feels like you guys do a pretty interesting job of you're always moving the goalposts. I mean, stylistically, I can go through your records, but it's like Shine On off the first album, Daylight, very pop rock. Restless off The Heat, very pop rock. The Outsiders, more folk rock. Drive All Night off The Reckoning, just flat out rock and roll, and so on and so on. But it seems like that's an important part of who you guys are, not to stand still, but to continually evolve.
Yeah, 1,000%. No, when I first joined the band in 2011, I was actually fortunate enough to be a fan of the band, so I was very familiar with all the records, and I'd seen the band live a bunch. I'd been friendly with them. We were friends, so it was. I always from afar, I guess, appreciated that fact, or that thing about Need to Breathe is, when on the Outsiders, when somebody was just like, hey, what if we put a banjo on this thing, it there was a lot of like friction, with whether it be the industry or labels, and just people were like, this will never work, you're going to put a banjo on this makes no sense. And the band just really was like, we're just gonna, we feel this is what we want to do, and it feels right to us, and so we're going to do it. And that was before Mumford and before the Lumineers. Even this is 2009, so this is like before that folk movement really took off. And so but that's kind of what the band has always done. That's what and when I started in 2011, we were about to release The Reckoning, and that was the same kind of thing. And Hard Love was like, hey, what if we put synthesizers on this record? People were like, that's a terrible idea. But we did it, and we always have something else that we're like, what if we did this thing? What if we pushed it a little further? And I'm proud to say that we still do that. And I think that is kind of for us the goalpost, if you will, or whatever. I'm just saying, like, is this good? Is this good enough for Need to Breathe or not? Did we push ourselves? Did we do those things? And that always helps us kind of get to the finish line.
Yeah, and it seemed like, you always would think about any kind of band or even like an organization as there's a progression to everything you do. You want to grow, and it just seems like there's been this kind of continuum of growth for the band over the past, I guess, 22 years or 20 years the band's been together. But it's like that growth seems to be an important element of who you guys are.
Yeah, and I think that for us, when we look back at our career, I think we can all say there was never like a moment that was like, oh, that was the moment that we were successful, or that was the moment that we made it big. We had our big hit song, and then everything changed for us. It's kind of been a lot of gradual little things along the way that have kind of built us up to this place. And in some ways, yeah, we've had some. I mean, of course, we're very fortunate, and we've had some success, and some big things have happened for our band. But it was never like an overnight thing, which really made it to where even now, 20 plus years into a career, we're still like, well, what's going to be the thing that really pushes this thing, to the next level? We still have those conversations now. And I think that if we would have been on our first or second record and we had just this massive smash single that took us on tour, that sold out arenas, all this stuff, like, would we still be here 20 years later? I don't know. I really feel like the reason that we're still here is probably because of the journey, because of the, taking it one step at a time. And I would rather it, I'd take that any day for sure.
Well, and you have had a nice string of hits. I mean, sprinkled throughout the 20 years. I know that I first discovered you with the song "The Outsiders," and honestly, that's one of my like desert island. If I had a handful.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I love it.
I saw you play live a couple years ago at a festival, and I'm like, they got to play this. They got to play this.
We get in trouble. That's one that there's a couple in our list. If we don't play it, people get pretty pissed off. That's one.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
So I'm curious though. As part of this evolution, I talked to John Foreman of Switchfoot about this a couple seasons ago on the show. You guys have also been pinned as a Christian rock band. I know that Bear's been asked about this repeatedly, and he and Bo grew up in a family where their father was a minister. And I know that it's something that Switchfoot has struggled with, and that you don't want to get pigeonholed as one thing because you have so much to offer, whether it's secular or non-secular audiences. And you don't want one audience to feel like, oh, we're not meant for you, when in the reality, you're trying to just make your art to appeal to a broad audience, right?
Yeah, I think we've struggled with that for years. I don't even know if struggle is the right word. I think we're learning what that kind of, I guess, what that means for us. For a long time, it was like we would say, when the band started out, we wanted to put our music in every place. If somebody said, if I don't know, Pizza Hut said, "Hey, we'd love to exclusively play your music. We want to play it in every Pizza Hut across, the U.S." We'd be like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So, but then eventually, if all the Pizza Huts are playing it, and that's kind of taken over, and everybody knows you as the thing that Pizza Hut's playing. Are you now a pizza band? Well, no, they just decided they wanted to play our music, and while we're appreciative of that, and we love pizza, that's not exactly what defines us completely. And I do think that's for us. That's kind of that's just been an ongoing kind of way that we're trying to figure out how to explain that. I also think, as I've gotten older, one thing that I've thought about a little bit more is, there is a industry, a Christian music industry that and there are people that are proudly claiming to be Christian artists, and they're really good at what they do, and I don't want to take away from them, like it's easy for us to say, no, we're not that, but we could also look at it and be like, we're not that because look how these guys are really good at it. Let's make sure that we're not saying, we're not trying to be offensive, saying like we're not this or not that, but we're also like, when you put it next to, we don't do the thing that this other artist does, and they do it really well. So maybe check them out for that thing. If that's what the box you want to check out them. And I think that there's a place for everybody to listen to Need to Breathe music, and there always has been. So, I think that will always be a thing that we kind of wrestle with, but I think we're feeling a little bit more comfortable in our skin and just being who we are. And I think that's how we've tried to be our whole career. And so far it's worked okay.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, as an artist, you still got to eat. And last time I heard, Christian music fans, they'll pay money to go see concerts, and it gives you an audience. It helps you build the entirety of your audience. So it's like, who cares, as long as you guys get to make your art and play your art and perform and sell records or however music is sold today.
So and honestly, like there's been songs in our career that are faith leaning or whatever.
Oh yeah,
that really, they mean a lot to us, and it's like, we want to have a platform to be able to talk about those things, or things that you know, we never want to be like, we never have claimed to have any of the answers, but we always want to be the band that asks the questions. So like, if we get to be that band on that platform that everybody's like, oh, they're the band that asks the questions, it's like, and that's kind of cool, you know. And I think John would say the same thing. I think they've done a great job with that. Just being a band that, you know, it's not all black and white, and
Yeah.
life isn't. So to be that band for somebody, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no question. I mean, you can just look at some of the titles of the songs, and there's certainly a lot that are faith leaning, but clearly, you know, there's a real broad dichotomy of music that you're making. I remember years and years ago, back when and you know, I know a lot of people like to make fun of Creed in the same token as Nickelback, but you know, I remember this. It was like one of those VH1 behind the musics about Creed and talking about Scott Stapp, and it was interviewing his father, and whose father basically disowned him when he got into music, and then he realized, oh wow, rock and roll can actually. He said, my son's basically, these are his psalms that he's writing, and these two things
Mm-hmm.
can actually coexist together. He can, you know, speak his truth in Christ and be a rock musician at the same time, and you know, they're not counterproductive to one another.
Totally. Yeah, I think that that's a beautiful thing. The thing that we've struggled with is when you don't have something to say about your faith, or when it's not about, when it's a song about your wife, or when it's a song about a girl that you think is cute. When we were, you know, if early on in our career, you know, the girl named Tennessee or whatever. Yeah, these are just like, you know, playful fun. And then when there's songs like that that they don't have that, when people are like, I thought you were this, I thought you were that. That's where you're like, wait a second, we never we just want to write what we, you know, just like everybody else. We want to be able to have all the paint brushes and all the paint just like everybody else. And so but I think it's cool. I think we're, like I said, I think we're, you know, we're getting more and more comfortable with just being who we are. And you know, it's you know, we consider ourselves very lucky. So
Yeah, and I think, you know, at the end of the day, as you know, as a songwriter, I know I can relate to um that notion of being comfortable in your skin, from where you begin to how that journey proceeds, and ultimately where, you know, where it ends up taking you, and that you ultimately find, I mean, how you can go back to like Bob Dylan, um
hmm
you know, when he made that switch over from folk to rock and roll. You know, he spent 3 years touring with the band as his backing band, and people were like throwing shit at them and booing them, but
yeah,
ultimately on peace, because that audience came around and met them 180 degrees later.
a thousand percent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's the thing. Through the years, one thing that has been a consistent is our fans. I mean, our fans really have come with us, and they really do trust us. If we have something to say, or if we do want to put a banjo or a synthesizer on a song, they've been really open. They may at first they may be like, I don't know, guys. I need to listen to this a couple times, but they let us experiment. They let us do the thing, and um, that's the best part of this whole thing. Is just that we have people that care enough to let us kind of be ourselves.
Yeah. Uh, so let me ask you this. You know, you've had an interesting ringside seat in that in the last couple of years, the band also went through a pretty significant change in that, I mean, it was a band of brothers, with Bear and Bo, and then Bo left in what, 2020, I want to say.
hmm
Was that a significant milestone or challenge for the band to kind of move through?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that we had to decide as a band. You know, our really the band is that. You know, our biggest song is "Brother, Let Me Be Your Shelter." You know, so like
Uh,
we're like, hey, you know, this changes our story a little bit, and I remember, you know, me and Bear and Seth kind of looking at each other and being like, you know, this band's going to look a lot different. Are we up for the challenge of moving forward and doing this thing? And I would say out of the three of us, I was probably the most hesitant at the time, because I just didn't know, you know, like it was very scary. You know, we were in this time of like, it was around COVID had just kind of started too. It's like we were trying to figure out you know, we hadn't put out a record since 2016 at that point with Hard Love. It's 2020 now. The world is crumbling. You know, your brother by blood and also by just by life experience is now gone, and you're like, well, this everything's upside down. You know, what if this feels like it could be a the stars aligning almost to be like, maybe it's time to hang it up, you know, maybe this would be, you know. But I do feel like the band, I look at where we're at now, you know, this is 3 years, you know, later, almost 4 years later. I'm so thankful that we stuck with it because, you know, through this time, through COVID, through all the changes and everything, I really do feel like the band was, you know, had something to say and had some words of encouragement or words of comfort to a world that's like going through a lot of crap for like a couple of years. The fact that we got to be a soundtrack to some of that in whatever way, I'm like, man, I'm glad that we stuck through it, and we're able to do it, and that we're still doing it. So yeah, it was hard, and I you know, I feel like we're still figuring some things out, but in some ways I think that we're doing great, and we're, you know, we're stronger than ever. So it's just different, you know, it's just different when, you know, when things change.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, what was kind of the precipitating, I guess, factors in that? Like, what drove Bo to decide, you know, it's time for me to check out? Was it just a
Yeah, I mean,
need for, I got to do something different?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, you know, he's spoken about that, and we kind of let you know, him share from his
Yeah,
side. I think it was definitely, we were all pretty exhausted, to be honest, at that point. You know, you got to remember too, for us, you know, like I said, it had been since 2016 that we put out a new record, but we never stopped touring. I mean, we were on the road nonstop from 2016 to 2019 and into 2019. So we were all, I would say we were all pretty unhealthy, pretty much on our last leg, you know, professionally, you know, personally, emotionally. All of us were hanging on for dear life in some ways. Um, and so in some ways, I think, and this does not, I don't say this to take away from him, from Bo or anything, but I do think it was kind of a matter of time where one of us was going to probably break, you know, or want to leave or want to do something different or get healthy for themselves. And I think that sometimes change forces you to be healthy. Sometimes change forces you to think of life in a different way. And I think I can only speak for myself, but that change forced me to get healthy, in a lot of different ways and a lot of, things. And so as I look at it for myself, like I said, I can only speak for myself. You know, I do feel like there was a lot of growth that came from that, a lot of heartache. You know, it was tough, and it still is tough, but
yeah,
a lot of growth from it, and so there, you know, there is some silver lining in that if you can find some there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, let's talk about the new record.
yeah,
Caves. I know you guys have released 3 songs. Let's see, The Cave, Ever Known, and Hideaway. But the rest of the record in its entirety is going to be coming out September 15th. Talk about this record. My understanding is when you guys went into the studio, there was not trepidation, but you guys were a little nervous, feeling like you still had a lot to prove. And maybe that's part of that constant evolution that I noted earlier about the band, but that it wasn't
yeah.
just like, oh, we got this. It was, we got to figure this out.
Yeah, you know, this is for people that don't know, some of the history. This is the ninth studio album for our band, which is a lot of songs. You know, that's a lot of records, a lot of music, and so we're at a place in our career now where we don't want to just like put a record out every couple of years and be like, hey, what do y'all think of this? Okay, cool. We're gonna go play these songs on the road and work on the next one. Like we still want to have something to say. We still want to push ourselves, sonically and musically to create something, special, and I think we had that pressure. You know, our last record, Into the Mystery we did during COVID. We went to a house for 13 days and had some songs. We were like, I think this is a record. At the time, we really didn't know. Honestly, we were like, are we creating like the B-sides, or are we creating like a deluxe for Out of Body? Like, we were like, I don't really know what this is, but we can't tour, and we feel like we need this for ourselves, for healing. Just a lot of stuff going on. It's like, just with COVID and changes to the band and everything. We were just like, we kind of need each other right now. We need this moment. But the record was very stripped back, was very forced limitations. We did it in a house. And so we knew that we couldn't make that record again. We couldn't repeat it even if we tried. But we were like, we wanted to go back to those days like The Reckoning or Outsiders, where the band would just stay at the studio until the middle of the night and be like, let's this song feels great, but let's re-record it all again with a new drum kit. How about a new drummer? Let's do this. Let's redo the whole thing or whatever. And that's kind of how this process was. It's just us, not second guessing, but just making sure there was no stone left unturned. We're like, well, let's try everything. And I really feel like that's what this record is. It's us being comfortable enough to test everything. And I really do feel like it's a big record in that way. I don't think that we could have made this record 6 or 7 years ago. I feel like it takes some life experience to be able to be like, this isn't good enough. Let's keep doing it. Let's do it again. And I'm really proud of where it landed. I think it's a great record.
How especially after not having been in the studio for a while, how does the songwriting process work with you guys? Is it, I mean, does Bear come in with lyrics and the other guys come in with compositions? Is it kind of a mix of that, where some people have some lyrics written, some people have different compositions written? Every band's a little bit different. How do you guys function typically?
Yeah. I mean, this record, I feel like every record, especially in the last couple of years, has been a little different, with just with the way the band looks different now. This record, I will say this, for Into the Mystery, Bear came in with a bunch of songs and was like, hey, what do you think about this? Is this a record? We're like, yeah, I think this could be a record. This one was a little different. Bear had done some co-writing with some people in town for 2 or 3 songs, and that kind of kick-started us like thinking about a new record. We went into a studio and kind of tracked 2 or 3 songs. We were like, maybe these could be the new thing. But then actually we went out on tour with One Republic last summer and had some writers come out to help us to demo some stuff, and just to we would work during the day, play the show, and then go back to the hotel or wherever and work after the show. We did that most days while we were on tour. And so, a lot of it was, Bear would have an idea and he would bring it to the band. I actually got to do a lot of co-writing with Bear on this record, which is cool. And, it'd just be us like, I will say this. I mean, Bear has always been one of the best lyricists that I have been around or known. I would say that if I wasn't his friend, he's the kind of guy that can be like, hey, we need a bridge about life to death, birth to death and all the in-betweens, but we need it to fit in 2 lines. Can you go do that? And be like, give me 30 seconds. And he'll go outside and create something. You're like, how did you, how did you, that's how he is. So I will say, like, as far as lyrics, for the most part, there's no reason for anybody else to touch that world, but I think musically and melodically and vibe wise and all these things, I think the rest of the band kind of comes in and helps create this thing. And it really is a band effort. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we're all kind of in there, in the thick of it, trying to make it great. And this record is probably, I would say, the most collaborative in the creation part than we've probably ever had, which is really fun. It's like, it's really fun to see the band's thumbprint on the thing and be like, oh, this is Need to Breathe now, in the, and have people hear it that way. It's really cool.
Was there a sense in any way of since this was the first like time you've really been in the studio focused on creating a record since Bo left, did you feel that loss for the first time in a while? Because you probably had kind of gotten used to performing without him, but in terms of being in the studio, writing off the cuff, pivoting, as you know, as we all do when we're in the studio, was it that it must have kind of taken you back a little bit?
Yeah, so Out of Body actually would have been the first record. So we did we were working on some demos and stuff. But when we went into the actual studio, that was our first experience with that. And it really was like it felt very strange. There's pictures and videos of us, like our drummer Randall, who's like the greatest dude in the whole world. It's like playing banjo on the record because we're like, well, who's going to play the band? Who's going to play this? Who's going to do that? And we're all trying to figure it out. And I think that a lot of it was, you know, with a respect to what he brought to the table, it's like there's this ghost in the room almost of like, what would he think? What would he do on this? What would honestly, what would Need to Breathe do? I mean, like, you create this thing and it's like the fabric of who you are the people that are involved. And so, you know, even from the beginning, I remember hearing the original drummer, on some of those records, like The Reckoning and stuff, and like, man, we got to do something like that because that is Need to Breathe. That's what people think of when they think of. So that's always going to be there. I do think that with this record, we were a little bit more comfortable, which was good. We were able to be like, yeah, Need to Breathe has some folk instruments in the song, so let's figure out who's going to play them and jump in there in the hot seat and do it. Or, Need to Breathe has harmonies, or Need to Breathe has Bear's like growl vocal. Let's make sure we get that. I think it's us doing that and kind of being like, what makes this band special? Like, why do fans think this is special? And because of that, I think we were able to like get out of the way of ourselves in some ways and just like do the thing that felt like us, which is cool. Yeah, and I think we did that with this one.
So what's next? I imagine hit the road promoting the album. What is next for you guys?
Yeah, the record comes out September 15th, so we're going to be doing some press and promo and all that for that, and then we hit the road. We're doing it's a Caves World Tour, and Judah and the Lion is coming out with us to do some shows, and we're working harder than we've ever worked to get this show off the ground, and it's really fun and also really hard to cover 9 records worth of material and also promote or cover 8 records and promote a 9th record, because we're all excited. We could play all 11 songs from Caves and be totally happy. And some fans would love that, but a lot of them would be pretty ticked off if we don't play The Outsiders.
Gotta play The Outsiders. I'd throw something at you, man. Come on, you gotta.
I know. We'd say somebody throw a banjo from the crowd, we'd have to pick it up and play it. So we'll figure.
I was about to say, if it's a decent one, maybe you keep it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, Josh Lovelace from Need to Breathe. Thank you so much for being on the load. I really appreciate your time today, and thanks for being with us.
Yeah, man, it's a blast. Thanks for having me.